Hi folks, Tom here. Uh, your Pure Profit Pro guy. It's good to see you again, even though I can't really see you. But it's good to be making another Pure Profit Pro video. I've been told to give people value, and we're going to wander off the beaten path tonight. I'm going to talk about traditional education. I know that some of us can almost be embarrassed especially if we're just embarking on a new journey here, and we can't say yet that I'm making $10,000 a month. And then, of course, everybody's listening to you. Instead, when your friends ask you what you're up to, you have to say, well, I'm getting into internet marketing. And, they'll say, how's that going for you? Well, I'm just setting up stages right now. But we know what we're doing, don't we? Even before we're making big bucks. We know how well we've researched any given opportunity. We know how well we've prepared it. Are we using their own proprietary software, or have we elected to take other optional software? Costs a little more. A lot of times it depends on who our sponsor is, what he or she is recommending. But it's all optional. Pure Profit Pro is a business in the box. Business in a box, that, as the saying goes. And you can actually be 100% up and running just with what comes with the company, what the company gives you itself, which is a lot when you consider the small one-time admin fee we pay. But what I'm getting at is, if friends ask you what you're up to these days, and you happen to say, well, I'm getting into internet marketing, it sounds like you're into something off the beaten path. Instead of saying, well, I've taken a part-time job to make extra money. It's off the beaten path. It's not what most people do. You're actually making a business venture on your own. And you've chosen to believe, I've chosen to believe, what I've seen in other presentations. And when people start getting bank statements out, and of course covering up, I don't know, whatever it is they have to cover up to protect themselves, and you see the numbers, it's pretty hard to argue with, Also, if you've been a MLM junkie or a business opportunity junkie like me, I never was big in MLM because I didn't want to sell to friends and family. That never lasted very long with me. so I gravitated toward business opportunities. In any case, let's revisit for a minute the beaten path. Ever send a kid to college? Have you reached that age yet? I've taken college courses, but I've never been a full-time college student. By the time I got out of high school, I had almost become like a hippie almost, like back then was the early 70s. You know, if anything, I would have been involved in organic farming, you know, like a good little hippie. I was kind of a half hippie, half mountain climber, rock climber. Rock climbing means you climb cliffs, that's what it means. Outdoor sports person. Used to climb mountains above timberline in the winter in New Hampshire. Pretty hardcore little climber. There was something in me that was cynical about college per se. Well, one thing is I no longer fit the college, you know, I was no longer college material. I had gotten involved during high school in this thing where they sent me to Dartmouth College, which is gosh, hang on a second. One of the Ivy League schools, you know, like Harvard, Yale. Dartmouth is one of them. Not as prestigious as Harvard and Yale, but it is an Ivy League school. It is in New Hampshire. And I got sent to a summer program. And it was part of the ABC program, A Better Chance. And I did very well in that summer program. Liked the instructors. Yes, did well. I was not a math and sciences guy, even though they said I had better than average aptitude for that. I was like the kind of guy who fell in love with Steinbeck novels and oh God help me, the one that wrote The Old Man and the Sea, Farewell to Arms. Oh, God help me. Getting older. Got that CRS syndrome going on. Can't remember, you know what. Great author. If you know about The Old Man and the Sea and A Farewell to Arms, you know who he is. Ernest Hemingway. God almighty. Ended up killing himself. Well, I was that kind of guy. I gravitated towards the creative side, you know. What is it? The right brain and the left brain. And now I can't remember which side the creative side is and which side the logical side is. You know, if you're a right brain thinker, you're a math and sciences guy. A left brain thinker, you're a poet, artist, writer, whatever. or it could be the other way around. So you think with one side of the brain, you smell the flowers. You think with the other side of the brain, mostly. You think from both sides. Anybody does, everybody does. You count the flowers. Okay. So I wrote pretty good compositions as well. So I'm hoping to keep your interest here. So how does a hippie who's also a health freak and gets into working out ends up in Florida working on roofs, becoming a lifeguard in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Ends up in the Army years later as a medic and then medical sergeant. I think being a civilian EMT led me into that. So, in any case, when it came time for my daughter to go to college, I kind of liked vocational technical colleges like the ones had a 2-year paramedic programs, not just EMT, but EMTP paramedic, because you walk out with a license, a certification, and you get a job. And I believed in things like nursing. 2-year nurse out of a voc tech school, which was very tough. The hospitals cranked out 3-year nurses, but they didn't have a degree. But they cranked out the best nurses because they were on the floors more. And then they had the 4-year nurses, which were new and way back in the mid-70s, where you go to a regular university and be a 4-year nurse. Okay, fine. That I would accept, because you're getting a degree wherein you walk right into a job, a career. Let's make it sound pretty. A career. But it's guaranteed. You come out of school with a bachelor's of science in nursing, you are going to have a job. Back then, that was during the years of the nursing shortage. You would have a job in 4 hours. I saw it happen. But a lot of college stuff, I'd seen a lot of friends come out of college later I learned out that these were called paper degrees. Some VA reps came and talked to us once, and they call them paper degrees. One VA rep would be speaking of his friend. He said, "Joe's got a paper degree. I've got a paper degree." They just had degrees, because having a degree looked good on the resume. Whether you were using it or not didn't matter. Okay, you had a degree. And I never heard anyone complain much about the cost of paying back those student loans. So I figured it mustn't be much. So my daughter goes to school. She picked linguistics. She was good at everything. She was very bright. Maybe she was left and right side thinker. I don't know. But grade school, middle school, high school, she was... I'm trying to still figure out who the real father is, because she didn't get those brains from me. My wife's pretty damn smart, though. She's a brilliant girl. And we got the inkling, or we came to realize that she was gifted in language because she got some special awards for French in her high school years. And in her senior year, she was taking several college level courses, and this I had never heard of, but apparently it's common, well, somewhat common. But she was taking college level courses when she was in high school. She ended up taking linguistics. And I said, honey, how are you going to get a job with linguistics, the study of languages? I said, what are you going to do, become a PhD and be a professor? Because that's about all I can see you doing with a degree like that. So finally she said, finally she branched out and took a second major. Chinese, Mandarin. And she told me, well, Dad, I wanted to pick the hardest language I could find, so there would be a challenge. Okay, that sounds like you. Great. And she said, right now, Chinese interpreters are the most sought out interpreters of all. As we know, Chinese have become very present in the business world in the last 10 years, whereas they didn't used to be. So yes, there's a lot of trade, a lot of business going on, despite recent tensions. There's still a massive amount of trade going on between the English-speaking world and the USA and China. And yes, Chinese translators are the most in demand. So I said, great. Sounds like you'll actually get a high-paying job when you get out of college. And I applaud that, because if you ask me, most young people come out of college with a degree they're never going to use. And at the time I said that, or felt that way, I had no idea how high those monthly payments on the student loans could be. No idea. Because of the extra major, 2 majors, linguistics and Chinese, my daughter came out, great grades, whoop-de-doo. already been 20 minutes. Some say the average attention span is 20 minutes. I talked to one preacher who said the average adult human attention span is 11 minutes. And I told myself all Pure Profit Pro videos that I do from now on should be 11 minutes or, well, 10 minutes or less. That's what I said. I am sorry, I'm digressing, but there's one reason I'm digressing tonight. Everything I put out so far has been called Pure Profit Pro. That's just for placement with other people who are into Pure Profit Pro. This might say Pure Profit Pro. I haven't figured out enough about placement and search engine optimization. So bear with me. But this tonight, I think I said it when I first started blabbing at you here. I've been told to give people value. I'm not going to do every Pure Profit Pro video about Pure Profit Pro. I'm supposed to give you value. Okay? So, on with my story. And I hope I can make it relevant to you. So my daughter comes out of school and she knows all the Mandarin. There's another form of Chinese called Cantonese, but it's not the official language of China, and its use is very minor compared to Mandarin. Mandarin is what the vast majority of Chinese use, Mandarin. You hear Chinese people in the US at the Chinese restaurant talk to each other. They're talking to each other in Mandarin, not Cantonese. My daughter comes out of college and she is not fluent in Mandarin. I'd even considered, if she couldn't get a job in a Chinese restaurant, summers between semesters, see if I could get her to volunteer to work in there, just to get used to the language. I don't know what happened to that. Hang on, folks. Oh, Starbucks Sumatra. So hooked on the stuff, I brew it at the house. My friends tell me mine tastes better than the stuff at the restaurant, Starbucks itself. Comes out of school and is not fluent in Mandarin. And I know what you're going to say. Did they not have a student exchange program so she could be fluent and spend a couple of school years in China? The answer is no, they did not. They never got one off the ground. We have not been that open with China for that long. They have tried. A few of her friends in her Chinese class tried to go over there and work something out, and I don't know the whole story, but every one of them came back within 5 days or less. They got there. Unlike Europe, where everybody knows a little bit of English if you speak slowly enough, and I was in Germany in the army for 3 years, and yes, speak slow enough, everybody knows a little English. Actually, everybody knows a surprising amount of English. And yes, we did vacation all over Europe. Everybody knows a little English, or actually quite a bit. China, nobody spoke English. Everyone that went over there to attempt to do, I don't know. The student exchange is usually you go in to live with a family. I don't know the whole story, but they all came back. They said they were totally confused. It was a horrible situation. I can't possibly see how that could have included moving in with a family. All I know is it was a big flop, and nobody in that class came out speaking fluent Mandarin. So, you can't be a translator if you can't speak fluent Mandarin. She could translate books. That was it. And she ended up first working in an Apple computer store. She worked with the customers. Now, some of the techs had degrees they actually used. Computer science, some of them. They weren't that impressed with computer science degrees. They just wanted to see if the techs could work on Apple computers. And they had one that they had to put up with for a while until they found someone who could replace him immediately. He had a degree into computer technology. But you know, some of these maths and sciences guys, very strong on that. The math whizzes, they're great on computers, but a lot of them have Asperger's syndrome. Not a lot, some. Asperger's syndrome people have a very hard time relating to other people. You know, it's not their fault. And well, they had one tech who he refused to talk to customers. He fixed their computers, but he refused to talk to customers. So they had to replace him. And it wasn't that he just had Asperger's. He had an attitude problem as well. There's a big difference. Big difference. I had a friend with Asperger's syndrome that used to show me how to work on computers, and he was fine. Socially a little awkward, but he was fine. He's a good friend. Okay. So, yes, my daughter eventually, the reason she worked in a computer store is she met a guy, and he lived in Vermont, and they actually were a very good match. He's actually a very resourceful guy. They're two very smart young people. They fell in love with each other. Just as important, they get along very well. And she ended up moving in with him. And He got a home very cheap, turned it into a palace. He's an old Vermont family, an old money family, and he's just good with everything. He can renovate a home, he can do amazing things with cars. You know, he can do auto mechanics, auto body. He can do anything on a home, from roofs to siding to windows to this. And he's when he met her, my daughter, he was living here in our area. He'd been away from home for college. He did go to college, and he was living away from home on his own for the first time outside of college, and he was doing IT. He was an IT guy for a grade school or a middle school, whatever. So he could do computers too, and IT. IT is done. It's one thing to work on a computer itself. It's another thing to work on a network of computers. Well, he could do both. So he's one of these guys who can just do everything, and he's smart. He's got a lot of common sense. So that was a blessed union. We just 3 days ago, we celebrated our grandson's first birthday. Okay. So the gist of what I'm talking about is what we are doing in internet marketing. Most of us do it for supplemental income, at least at first, but we're all hoping to replace our income. Most of us. I happen to have 2 pensions, so even if it gets to, if it will get to 10,000 or more per month, for me it'll still be supplemental income. And we might sound like we're off the beaten path, but what I was just describing all this time was the beaten path. And what is it worth? My daughter ended up working in a computer store. Then she ended up managing the computer store. And she's a stay-home mom now, which is very good for that young boy who's my grandson, who's only a year old. And believe me, a year-old kid takes up a lot more than 8 hours a day. She does a great job at it, and I'm so glad she can stay home with him. For the amount of money she makes, or was making, probably wouldn't be worth it to have him in a nursery all day. And then he's getting brought up by someone else. Here's the point. Even if she was fluent in Mandarin, do you think she would take a job as a Chinese interpreter? Now, you're either going to work for a big business or the federal government. And you're probably going to spend 6 months or more in China. And the time you spend in the U.S. isn't going to be up in Vermont. So where does that career as a Chinese interpreter go? It goes to shit. Okay. And she went to a state university, which don't cost as much. So, guess how much money I'm paying per month for those loans? $655 a month. You see another reason why I'm determined to be making $10,000 plus per month, and I will be. $655 a month. Payments on my wife's Toyota that I got for her were like $325 a month. I think I started and figured it out. I think the total of our loans are something like $120,000. I don't really know. All I know is, without the money that I'm soon going to be making every month, I'll never pay off those loans. Just like never paying off the mortgage. We were a military family. We didn't buy our first home till 2002. After my active military years. Then once I became a reservist, I was a part-time soldier. I didn't get moved around anymore. Then we could buy a home. Well, we're never going to pay off this home without that extra money either. But I did my homework well. And everything's in place. And I will make that money. This is a long video. I said that like 3 times. But you know what? I'm giving you value. Because here's the shocker. I'm really glad I found this magazine. I'm really glad I found this. Because there's apparently a lot of people feel the same way I do about college. If you think what we're doing is off the beaten path, this is what is happening to people who are on the beaten path and are going to college and doing the right thing. Give me a second. Consumer Reports. That's the kind of magazine that has a very, very good reputation. I kind of ruined my life by going to college. Was this written by just another young person who realized that she was just another bozo on the bus and ended up with a paper degree? No. This girl got herself a bachelor's of science in nursing. And even though the nursing shortage has been over for a long time, and it's not easy to get a job as a nurse anymore, she got a job. So this girl went to college and actually got a BSN and actually got a job because of her college degree. So why, pray tell, is she saying I kind of ruined my life by going to college? So says Jackie Crowan, 32 years old. She didn't just go straight into college after high school. Portland, Oregon. $152,000 in student debt. $152,000 in student debt. She has to pay, it's approximately $1,000 a month in student loans. When she complained and said, this is too much. I mean, I've got a good job, but it's $1,000 a month? When we first bought our house, our mortgage payments were $1,000 a month. Now they're like about, I don't know, $1,200, maybe $1,300. I need to look into that. But when she complained, you know what they said? They said, if you don't make your payments, we can take the money out of your father's pension. So here she is, a registered nurse. Registered nurses make good money. But she said, this $1,000 a month right off the bat is really hard to come up with. Because you've got to remember, she's in a good job, but the entry level is probably not the greatest. And they told her, you know, basically, tough shit. Even if you declare bankruptcy, student loans are one thing that you cannot get rid of, even in a bankruptcy. You cannot get rid of student loans, even if you declare Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Chapter 7 is the most severe bankruptcy that you can declare. And that's when they threatened her and said, we can take the money from your father's pension. Nice college people. College loan people. And it goes on to say 42 million people owe 1.3 trillion in student debt. How we made this mess, who's to blame, and what you can do about it. So, I don't know. You know, I admit, I've always had this attitude about college, and I tended to like the I don't need the glasses just to talk with my friends here. I hope we do all become friends and know each other in time. But I gotta admit, I tend to like the voc tech, not only the voc tech colleges. Like you go to a voc tech college for welding and you come out with a skill and you take your certification tests and you become a welder and you make good money, you know? Of course, everybody's answer, who's the most highest paid? Plumbers, always. All right, that's what everybody says. You go into a Voc-Tech college, you become a plumber, eventually a master plumber, and you make a very good living. I have my plumber, church friend. This guy and his wife were so badly addicted to meth. They were meth heads. They lost their kids. They still couldn't get off meth. They became born-again Christians. And I'd like to think they went into rehab. I don't know if they really did. They tried NA. They saw a horrible fight break out in this NA meeting. I don't know. Whatever it is, they just said by the grace of God, they just lost the desire. And that's really something. But anyway, and so after losing everything and their kids, they've got their kids back. Now they're taking care of one of their grandkids, because their daughter, who unfortunately wanted to become a missionary, got hooked on heroin, and they're taking care of her kid. But long story short is, he's a plumber, a master plumber, of course. Very good, friendly personality, good guy. So a lot of his residential work, and I'm sure a lot of his commercial work, repeat work, is because of his good personality. He's a good guy. And he's teaching his son. And his new home, you gotta remember, this is somebody who lost everything. His new home only has 5 bathrooms and is on the water. So I guess plumbers make good money. So yeah, I got to admit, I like Voc-Tech colleges, and now I'm finding out there's even Voc-Tech high schools. And I know back in my head somewhere, I've heard of young people who went to Voc-Tech high schools, never went on to Voc-Tech colleges, just Voc-Tech high schools, and came out and made good livings. Never even went to any kind of college at all, not even a Voc-Tech college. Am I saying that there's no place in this world for arts and letters? Yes, of course there is. My feeling? You want to take a course on creative writing? Go take a part-time course. Well, go take a course on arts, creative writing on your own time at night. If you have an interest, feed that interest. But for God's sake, don't depend on it for a living. There's making a living, and then there's seeking out an education. getting an education is great, but don't make the mistake of thinking that getting an education is going to help you make a living. You want to make a living? Join Pure Profit Pro. How long does it take to get an MBA? 6 years. It takes 4 years to get that bachelor's degree and 2 more years to get that master's. If I had been more practical and maybe a little more assertive, and I've heard of some parents doing this, and say, look, this thing about Chinese is noble, but you want to teach a language? Well, you want to be a teacher these days, you need a master's degree. My daughter ended up going to college for 5.5 years anyway. Should have had to go to college for 6 years to get a master's in Spanish. Then, wherever she went, whoever she married, there would always be a school looking for a Spanish teacher. I would certainly hope. Spanish teacher with a master's. 6 years of school. So that's my little take, you know. Took me almost an hour to say, well, I really didn't have that in my head before I got all this off my chest, but I think it's of some value to you that those who go the traditional route, you know, just be prepared. Your son and daughter go to college. They're going to get an education. But don't mistake it for getting a living, for making a living. They're going to get an education. But don't make the mistake of thinking that's going to make them a living. Unless, of course, it is to be a nurse or a paramedic or a PA, physician's assistant, or a CPA, certified, you know, public accountant. Or in my daughter's case, would have been much more useful to have a master's in Spanish than to have a bachelor's in Mandarin. And it certainly wouldn't have been a problem for her to be fluent in Spanish. And we also know that if you're anything like me, I told you in the beginning of this that I've never been much with MLM. I've been in a couple. Last one I was in, I wanted it. It was way in the beginning of the internet. Not quite. It was in the early days of the internet. Fairly early. And I did not, my whole point was I wanted to do MLM with like-minded people. In other words, I wanted to do MLM with other MLMers. I did not want to sell to my family and friends. I did that once. Friend killer programs. NFL, not National Football League, but you know what I'm about to say. No friends left. So, you know, some of us have paid some pretty nasty tuition in our endeavors to make money online and, before the days of the internet, offline, when we used to mail cassettes to each other, when we used to try to sell vitamins to each other. What I'm trying to tell you is that the so-called tried and true methods of obtaining education and making a living and making money, they're not too cool either. I mean, yeah, some of the things I've done, I can see looking back how they were just pretty sleazy, you know. And I've paid a high tuition in my education in home-based businesses, aka business opportunities and MLMs. I paid a high price, a high tuition. But at least it's brought me to Pure Profit Pro, where I am finally making money. And yeah, some of the stuff I've done was and had hopes, you know. You're optimistic, you're hopeful. Was some pretty sleazy stuff. So anyway, wow. It looks like I can actually close before it's 1 hour. And what I'm sharing with you is that, thank God, Pure Profit Pro is not a sleazy program. It's very well thought out. It's very well thought out. That's why it gets good reviews. And that's why people are actually making a lot of money with it. So thank God for it. And say a prayer for me. I'm launching some new advertising this week, starting tomorrow. It's Sunday, August 7th. Tomorrow, August 8th, I'm launching some advertising. Big time. I want to be a busy little boy that Google Pixel extra large Pixel phone of mine is going to be ringing. but that's okay. I like that. Have a good day, and wherever it is, whatever time it is, where you are right now viewing this, whatever part of the world, whether it's morning, midday, evening, I hope and pray all is well with you, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Hope you're in good health. Hope you've either had a good day, you're having a good day, or you have a good day, depending what time of day it is right now for you. You take care now. God bless you. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye, my friend.